All right, hey everybody, welcome back to more videos for Australia Mountain, our culinary program. So for today's video, what we're going to work on is pastry cream and creme anglaise, which you know is something we use in ice cream bases. They are kind of similar, but there are differences, so we're just going to go through, show you the proper techniques, talk a little bit about some things that might go wrong when you make them. So what we're going to start with is pastry cream. What we've got is, we've got whole milk. So we're just going to pour our whole milk in here. And we got just a little bit of sugar, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to boil this. If we try to just boil the milk by itself, it's actually going to curdle on us. So by adding just a little bit of sugar in here, we can bring it up to temperature without it curdling. Go ahead and get our stove started. Not going to go real high on this. I mean, the most you're going to want to do this is medium. People get in a rush in the kitchen. They want to cook it really fast, and what happens is you're going to scorch the milk. You're going to get a little off taste to it, because as soon as any of this burns, turns a little bit dark, brown, black, you're going to have that in your taste. So I'm just going to whisk this a little bit just to kind of get it dissolved. Again, medium heat. I'm not trying to get real fast on this. I have plenty of time. If you do it right the first time, it's better to take just a smidge more time to do it than to try to rush and all of a sudden you have to start over, including scaling all your ingredients again. One thing I want to point out is I have a pretty narrow whisk here, because I want to make sure I can get in the pan here and I can go and get into the corners of this pan. I don't want to have any little bits of milk, cream, pastry cream as I'm making this that are stuck in there, because that's what's going to burn. So we're going to give this just a second to come up to a boil. While that's going, talk a little bit about what I have in another bowl here. What I have is a second portion of sugar and cornstarch, and I've thoroughly combined this, and this is what I'm going to mix in with egg yolks, and then I'm going to temper the hot milk into it and then bring it back into the pan. You notice that I have, again, sugar, cornstarch. I haven't put my egg yolks in yet. What some people will do is they'll get prepped for this in the kitchen and want to have everything ready to go. And as soon as I mix my egg yolks into this, and if I leave this open to the air, the egg yolks are going to start to actually crust up in this pan a little bit, which is not something we want to have happen. So as this starts to come to temperature, that's when I'm going to go ahead and put my egg yolks in here and whisk this together very well. Go ahead and get my plastic out of the way here. While this is going, let's talk a little bit about pastry cream and creme anglaise. What's the difference? We have milk, we have sugar. Creme anglaise is going to have a little bit of heavy cream in it, equal portions of milk and cream to give it that richness. What does pastry cream have in it that creme anglaise does not? Cornstarch and butter. What that does is, of course, the butter, we have this nice good portion of butter here, gives us a rich mouthfeel, very smooth texture. It's something we're going to be using in perhaps tarts, tartlets with fresh fruit on a nice thin crust. It's got a lot of mouthfeel to it. What the cornstarch does, it actually makes us a little more resistant to curdling during production. So it makes it just a little bit more user-friendly, as it were, as we're making this. So I'm just going to keep an eye on this. Turn it down just a smidge. Again, we don't want anything to burn. Any scorching whatsoever, you're best to go ahead and start over. All right, why do we have our hot milk here and we're going to have our egg yolk here? I said we're going to temper it. If I try to take my egg yolks and put it straight into the hot milk, we're going to get scrambled eggs, of course. So, as you know, by tempering it, by using a ladle, we're going to put just a little bit of this milk into the eggs and whisk it as I'm doing it, whisking it. That's going to bring the eggs slowly up to temperature and prevents it from curdling, prevents it from becoming scrambled eggs. So this is starting to get up to temperature. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my egg yolks ready to go here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. We of course scaled this correctly, so I want to make sure that I get all of this egg out of here. Don't want to leave any behind. Again, this is what I mentioned you don't want to do 15 minutes ahead of time and then just leave this open to the air, because then the eggs are going to start to crust up a little bit on you, and that's just more solids that we're going to end up having to filter back out when we're finished. Stir this up a little bit. Ideally, this will be as smooth as possible without any lumps. So I'm making sure I'm pulling down from the sides and getting it all incorporated. The egg yolks were room temperature. They don't necessarily have to be for pastry cream, but it does make this a little bit easier to combine, because as the egg yolks are very cold, they're going to want to bind up with that sugar and cornstarch a little bit. My milk, I'm continuing to watch to make sure it's not scorching. We want it to bring it just barely to a boil. Just to get my milk going here a little bit. It started to boil just a little bit. You can see here on camera. So I'm going to just turn this off for right now, because it's come to boil. It's just barely come to a boil. Move some things out of the way. So what I need to do is I need to be constantly whisking. Well, guess what? See, my pan is spinning as I'm doing this, so it's hard to do this with two hands and hold the pan. If I put a damp towel on here, look, all of a sudden now my bowl isn't spinning. So now I can whisk with one hand and pour in some hot milk with the other. So here, constantly stirring. I don't have tons and tons of milk here. I'm just barely going to do this a little bit at a time. Keep whisking. Bowl's turning a little bit, that's fine. We just don't want it to spin, spin, spin. It's better to do this slower than faster. You're going to see the eggs are starting to thin out from the milk. They're also coming up to temperature. Just doing this just a little bit at a time. Try to get any egg, sugar, and cornstarch that's on the edges of the pan, because your recipe has been scaled out to have all that in there. So if I leave 10 grams of eggs behind, your pastry cream isn't going to be as rich as you think it's supposed to be. I usually do about 2 to 3 ladles worth here. All right, now I'm going to need to put this back into the bowl. So I'm going to put my heat on actually low, because I want to bring this in without having an issue. I'm also going to grab a timer, because we're going to need to cook this for 2 full minutes to get the cornstarch completely hydrated. So I'm just going to slowly, again, I'm still tempering, I'm slowly drizzling this back in. Once I get it all in, I can bring the temperature up a little bit more. If you do happen to get a little bit of scrambled egg in there, it's not a big concern, because the common technique is to strain this when we're finished before we go ahead and put it in the fridge. Because you are going to want to chill this completely, perhaps overnight, before you use it in a formula, in a tart, in a pastry. Very important with pastry cream and creme anglaise is when we put this in the walk-in to chill it down, we're going to put plastic wrap directly in contact with the surface, because what will happen with a Bavarian, a pastry cream, creme anglaise, you can actually get a skin that forms on it like a pudding skin. A friend of mine likes pudding skin. We don't like that in our products. it'll actually skin over a little bit, and that's not a very appealing texture. So by putting the plastic wrap directly in contact with the product, it prevents that skin from forming. All right, go ahead and get this out of the way. Again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll this whisk in the corners as this is cooking, because I don't want any pastry cream to be stuck in the corner of this pan, and that's what's going to burn. The corners are going to burn the fastest. You can also see here there's a foam on this pastry cream. When this actually starts boiling, that foam is going to disappear, and you're going to see this tighten up very, very quickly. I'm now going to go just a little bit closer to medium heat. Again, I am constantly whisking this. I'm not letting it sit. That's when you're going to have problems with burning. The foam has already started to dissipate, a sign that it's coming further up to temperature. My foam's almost completely gone. I can bring my temperature up just a little bit more. Again, you see my wrist action here? I'm rolling this whisk through the corners. I can feel just the resistance on the whisk. It's starting to fight me a little bit, so that cornstarch is hydrating. It's completely swelling up. You might be tempted to go, oh, it's pretty thick now, it's done. No, until it comes to a boil and boils for 2 complete minutes, we can't guarantee that that cornstarch is completely thickened. You can really feel it starting to fight me now. It's getting very, very thick. You know, visually, all the bubbles are gone. You really can't see any of that foam that was on the top of this when we first started. Again, you'd be tempted to stop whisking, but then that's when you're going to have a problem with this burning. Go the other way a little bit. Now I'll bring my temperature up a little bit more. Again, it's a fine line between too high and the corners of the pan burning, sides of the pan burning, and it taking too long to come up to temperature. Visually very, very, very thick. It's essentially a vanilla pudding. I don't have vanilla in the formula, but it's eggs, sugar, milk. It's pudding. A very, very rich pudding. If I let it sit for a second, you can see it started to, just for a second because I don't want it to burn, it has started to boil. I've set my timer for 2 minutes. Constant whisking. Can always reverse directions. Again, I'm being very, very careful on my temperature. A small batch like this is very prone to burning. Like most things in the kitchen, the smaller the batch, the more attention you have to pay to it, and actually a little bit harder it is to deal with. Here's my 2 minutes. I'm going to immediately turn the heat off, and I'm actually going to take this off the heat and bring this over here for just a second. Just kind of look at it real quick. Looks like I did a pretty good job. I don't see any brown bits. I don't see anything burned. My butter is also room temperature. It's been, here in the kitchen with us for a while. You can see I've diced it up. It makes it easier to incorporate. Put about half of it in. Just going to stir. Pastry cream, sounds fancy. It kind of is fancy. It sounds complicated. As you saw, it really isn't that complicated. It's a great thing to have on your menu. It's something that goes very, very well with fresh fruit in fruit tarts. Again, probably one of the first things other than, cookies and brownies that you're going to learn in the professional kitchen. Just stirring this to combine. That butter in there gives it a little more of a gloss as well. It's pretty good. So I've got a clean bowl. I've got a fine mesh sieve. Actually, we may do this in portions just to keep it from being too messy. Yeah, it's going through pretty good. Again, what we're trying to do here is strain out any of the egg that got scrambled, because it will happen a little bit, any crunchy bits from the sides of the pan, and that a lot of chefs in eggs don't like that that kind of stringy bit that's called the Anglaise. They don't like that in their products. They don't want a customer to have that in their mouth, so they go ahead and they always do this as a safety step to get that out. I have some more in my pan that I'm going to use a clean thing to pull out. Just finish pulling this through. You can see that's nice and smooth. Just tapping this to get through. I'm not really pushing hard through this. I'm just kind of moving it around because I don't want to force any crusty bits through there. I see that actually there's no real scrambled egg in here, so that's good. It's always good when the demos go off without a hitch. I'll set this aside. I'm going to grab one of these guys. Set this back in here, just because we did work so hard on this, so we want to make sure we get all this out. Again, I don't see, I'm kind of looking at my pan as I'm doing this, and I see that not to pat myself on the back, but just to, quality check. I don't see any real burnt or crusty bits in here, so I was watching my temperature. That's something you do want to watch as you're making this in the kitchen. I'm going to try to do this relatively rapidly because I don't want this to, again, form a skin, which it will almost immediately as it starts to cool. Scrape off the bottom bit. Again, not trying to force any crusty bits through here, just kind of moving it around in the mesh. And that is Pastry Creme 101. So we're going to, again, put a bit of plastic wrap on this in direct contact with the surface, and we're going to put it in the refrigerator or the walk-in and let it cool. We don't need it today, so we're going to let it cool overnight. We're going to clean up, and when we come back, we're going to do something very similar with creme anglaise.